Hi, welcome back to the channel. I'm Michelle, and today I'm going to be sharing the guidelines I have for my homeschool. And it's not like I started homeschooling and I created this list of, rules or anything like that. Many of the things I'm going to talk about are just things that have naturally evolved as an expectation in my homeschool. So I thought I'd share with that. A lot of them are just extensions of parenting as well. So the guidelines, the things we follow in our homeschool. First one is school is a priority in our house. And I think this is really important. So we don't schedule appointments or anything around school time. We usually do school in the morning. We start at 9 a.m. We usually end around 1. There's a lunch break in there as well. With the exception of my 7-year-old who has celiac disease, she sees a pediatric GI specialist because of her celiac, and he's 2 hours away. So usually when she has scheduled appointments, that's usually what she does for that day. Other than that, we don't do dentist appointments, doctor's appointments, any other things, play dates during school time, because school is a priority. My kids know that when they finish, they have the free time. And because we've had such scheduled consistency for the last 3 years, they know that once they finish independent work, they finish group work, they have the entire day to do whatever they want. So it's usually not an issue getting my kids started. Like I said, my 4.5-year-old starts at 8:30 in the morning because I like to finish I like to do his work first and finish with him first. And then my 7 and my 11-year-old start at 9 a.m. And it's never a fight to get them to start. It's very much, they know that this is what we do because we've had the consistency in the schedule. This is what we do. If we get this all done, then we'll have the rest of our afternoon to do whatever we want. So I think our kids very much internalize how they see our attitudes towards school. So if we're showing up as the teacher, if we're consistent, if we're prepared, they're going to internalize that, yes, this is something that's valued. This is important. Not just, oh, we have school today. It's something that has purpose and importance. And I'm conveying that as their teacher to them by showing up, being prepared, being ready, all those things. I think routines very much underpin our expectations, and my kids are very clear on the expectations in our homeschooling because I've always been very clear since the beginning with them. We don't have a lot of flip-flopping or curriculum jumping or anything like that. I think routines and consistency really benefit children a lot, and I think kids very much rise to the expectations we set for them. So I think if, as teachers, we make those expectations clear, kids will rise to them. So next one is everyone comes prepared to work. So what I mean by that is my kids know where their stuff is. I have a shelf, and I will link it up in my Homeschool Spaces video I made a while back. But there's a shelf on our bookshelf that holds, one side is my 11-year-old, the other side my 7-year-old. My 4-year-old I do put up higher just because he'd get into all of the school things that I don't want him to destroy. But my girls know exactly where their stuff is. Like I said, I tell them 9 a.m. I do warn them prior to 9 a.m. 8:30, half an hour, school starts, just to get them into that mindset. But 9 o'clock, they go, they get their stuff, and they start on their independent things they can do without me in case I'm still finishing with my youngest. But he normally is done by 9 a.m. But there is sometimes overlap, but they can be doing their independent work, so their handwriting. My oldest can be doing a lot of things. She can do fix-it grammar, editor-in-chief. She has a lot of things she can start independently. IEW, we've started doing that during the summer. She can get that going. So because we've had so much of this consistency and schedule, they know exactly what to do without me being there. And that's just something that's been the nice thing about having routines, is that you don't have to constantly get on your kid's case to do something because they're aware of what's coming next. They're used to it, so it's a very natural flow. Another thing is obviously the everyone comes prepared that applies to me as well. So teacher prep, every Saturday I sit down and I teacher prep for that week. Now I do the Sabbath schedule, 6 weeks off, 1 week, or 6 weeks on, 1 week off. And during that 1 week off, I do prep for the coming 6 weeks. But what I do that Saturday, the week prior to our normal on-school month, is that I make sure I'm looking over math lessons, especially since we're doing dimensions. My 7-year-old is doing 2A, and my 11-year-old is about to start 5A. Making sure I'm reading over those lessons and understanding how to teach. I think teaching is really important in homeschooling. A lot of the things, especially when you get into older grades, you can't just open a book and expect to know how to teach that. You have to do some work on your end. So my kids see me doing this prep, and they see me reading books about teaching and education and spending my personal free time preparing for the lessons ahead. I think, again, it shows them that I value this, that this is important to me, and it creates in their heads too that this is something important. Mom's spending her time doing this outside of normal school time, that this is something we should take seriously. Another thing is my kids, they have their own areas that they homeschool, and that's just their preference. They don't work well. Any of them work well in the same area. We do gather for group subjects, but more intense work like math, language arts, they have to have their own separate areas, and honoring that request that they don't work well together, that having different areas and different tools available to each child. So for example, my 7-year-old has noise canceling headphones that she uses when the environment is too loud or too distracting for her to get her work done. Same with my 11-year-old. She has the option of going up to her room, closing her door, turning her music on to do her work, because that's what works best for her. Another thing, we always have visual schedules around, and I think this helps them, again, flow into the next thing and they get used to it. So this is our summer schedule. I just make these on Canva, and I just put some cute graphics that I think describe each child. This is my 7-year-old, but this is her schedule. So anytime, and you can see there's a lot of visuals on here too, anytime they're wondering, especially since we just switched into summer schedule, what comes next or what they have to get done for the day, it's always available to them. They don't have to constantly interrupt me to ask, okay, what should I work on next? They know what's coming next. They can revert to this, and we always have visual schedules up for my kids to reference back to, and that's been really helpful. But again, being prepared, both they're prepared to learn, their materials are ready, everything's good to go. I'm prepared to teach. So, I'm not looking last minute for teacher materials for like science, or if we're doing a history activity, I'm not waiting for the last minute to do that. That's something that's been prepped ahead of time. And I think it's really important as educators to have that planned prep time to make things flow easier. But again, if my kids see me pushing off lessons or skipping lessons because I'm not prepared, that's going to give them the idea that this isn't really a priority, which is number one, that this isn't really important. I think that can come to bite you in the butt later when you hit those middle school, high school years, where you need to hand your students things that they need to do independently, and they don't have the skills necessary to do that because you've never scaffolded them up to that level of independence. And it's not something you can just, you're independent now. It's something that takes prep and easing into. But I think having that mentality of how you perceive school is really important, and I think your kids very much pick up on that. So I do my best to come prepared as well as my kids come prepared. Number 3, everybody has to try. I don't expect perfection. I don't expect you to get it right the first time. I don't expect you to get it right the second time, but you have to have a willingness to try. We will learn nothing. We will get nowhere if you shut down and you don't try. And this is something I've worked with my kids in the growth mindset, the idea that failure is not, you're bad, you're dumb, it's an opportunity to learn. And that's very much foundational in our homeschool, that you have to try. You're never gonna get anywhere if you don't try. That our new motto is, it's hard, but not impossible. And I talk about this a lot with my oldest with math, that it's something that she has struggled with, and a lot of that is just her mental space around math, that she somehow thinks because it doesn't come so easily that she's not smart with it, when in fact she is very bright with it. She just needs to get over that mental hurdle of it, and this idea of perfectionism, that you don't always get things right the first time. And just because something doesn't come naturally to you doesn't mean you can't learn it and master it and excel and be really good in that area or that field of study. So I think that's a really important lesson that leaks into all areas of life, that you have to have a willingness to try new things. And I think seeing the struggle and seeing that you can get through it is really important too. Again, another life lesson. And I think showing my kids that I too struggle sometimes with math. Dimensions can get really intense and the word problems trip me up, and that's okay. And it's okay for them to see me struggle or not know the answer. What's important is they see me trying to get the answer. So sometimes that'll be me going to my husband and be like, hey, can you explain this math problem? I don't understand this step or where they got this number. And they will see me asking for help, which is a really important skill to know how to do, instead of being a perfectionist and just shutting down because you can't get it right. Learning to ask for help is really important. Another thing is modeling that behavior of, if I don't understand, how do I get the answer? So our kids are looking to us, especially when we homeschool and we're the only ones around. Modeling that behavior of, you don't want to raise perfectionist kids. You want to raise kids with a growth mindset that they understand mistakes happen. It's the opportunity to learn. Modeling that behavior as much as you can in homeschooling, because you don't want to show your kids you're the person with all the answers, because one, that's not true. Two, it's much more important to learn how to get those answers than to just automatically know them. So another example of this is my 4-year-old. He's probably my only one that really gives me pushback, because my older two have been, we've been homeschooling for 3 years now. They're used to my consistency, my schedule, my expectations. They go with the flow without, very little pushback. My 4-year-old, who is brand new to the game, this was his first year homeschooling, and he, I have to say, of course, is the most stubborn out of all of my children, but very much putting it in his field. He really likes to be the one that makes the decision. He only pushes back when he feels like he doesn't have control over the situation. So how I handle that? So sometimes I'll say, hey, I warn him prior, school starts in a little bit, and I get his stuff down because, again, it's on a higher shelf, and I put his things on his table, and I said, it's time to start school. And he's like, well, I don't want to. And I said, okay, that's fine. I'm gonna go work with your sisters then, because they'll probably need my help in a little bit. And the instant I say that, he runs over to the table. He's like, no, I'm ready now. Because he knows that if I work with his sisters, I'm gonna be really busy, and I'm not gonna be able to do his work until the end. And he actually really enjoys schoolwork, and he enjoys doing all the little activities, and he's the one that prompted me to start homeschooling him this past year because he wanted to. But again, it has to be in his decision to do it. So as soon as I say, okay, that's fine, and I'm not gonna fight with a 4-year-old about starting school, I have better things to do with my time. But just that little switch where it's his choice. He's much more adaptable to what we're doing, and of course goes straight into it. Out of all the times he's done that, never has he said, okay, fine, go work with my sisters. He wants to get his schoolwork done first. He wants to be the special one that gets to go first. So again, showing that trying is important, not shutting down. Growth mindset, and I've seen that all the way from my 4-year-old to my 11-year-old. My 4-year-old is just starting the beginning steps of getting that growth mindset, scheduling, and consistency. Well, my 11-year-old has benefited it from a very long time, and I can see that. And the scaffolding that I've done for her, she's very much ready for entry into middle school and independent work, and it's really built upon itself each year. Number 4, a guideline I always follow is work is checked daily, and this is for immediate feedback reasons. I'm not one of those that check at the end of the week or just assume my child did it. So for my 7-year-old, I check while she's doing her work, because I'm usually sitting there with her doing her work. Because of her age, she's not really independent much, but the few things she does do independent, like her handwriting, I will check while she's doing her math problems sitting next to me. My 11-year-old, she usually finishes all her core work, and then we go to lunch and then group subjects. So during lunch, while they're eating, I will go over her core work and see if there's any corrections that need to be made. That way, when she's done with lunch and everything is still very fresh in her head, I sit her down, I say, okay, let's go over this. And again, she's so used to this that she expects that after lunch, okay, we're gonna have a little sit-down review with mom, anything we need to cover. She can also ask questions at this time. Sometimes she'll circle like a math question that she was unaware of, and that signals to me that we need to discuss it during this time. So having dedicated check-in time is really important, especially when we're working towards that level of independence in the middle school and high school years. That takes scaffolding, tools, and you have to obviously give your kids some skills to understand how to do all those things. So the last one is that our relationship, so between my children and I, is a relationship of respect, is a relationship of trust, and it's a relationship of open communication. So what I mean by respect is that I want my children to be respectful of my time, just like I'm respectful of theirs. So I come up prepared, ready to teach. I've done all my teacher prep, and I want them to be respectful of that I'm not wasting their time either, that I'm not giving them busy work, I'm not giving them work to just do. The things I choose are very intentional for my children, and that could be either areas they need to grow in. So for example, this past school year, at the end of the year, I brought in some things for my oldest that I saw she needed some additional review with. So I brought in Fix-It Grammar, Editor-in-Chief, and Math Mammoth review sheets for just math practice on a daily basis. She didn't push back at all because she knew, again, we have this relationship of trust and respect and open communication, that I said, hey, I've noticed that we're having this consistent problem or repeated errors in this work. I think these things would help you in those areas, and once we've mastered those areas, we can take those resources away. And she was completely fine, no pushback at all. I was a little surprised by that. But again, she trusts that what I'm giving her is for a reason, and that I've looked into it and that I'm prepared, and she should trust me. And just that trust goes both ways. I trust that my kids do their work. So especially with my 11-year-old, who is capable of more independent things, especially with language arts, I expect her to do the readings and to answer the questions. But I do check to make sure those things are done every day, because kids always have off days, and sometimes they can skip things by accident. Sometimes they can also skip things on purpose. And I think if you're not checking in with your kids on a regular basis, those little habits are going to get worse. And you don't want those, especially as they gain those years of independence, you don't want them to, excuse my language, half-ass their work because you're not checking it. But again, expectations. Kids rise to your expectations. Just because I'm the only one reading my daughter's papers doesn't mean she doesn't give her best effort forth. That just because mom is the only teacher and mom loves you unconditionally, there's nothing you can do wrong, doesn't mean I don't have expectations for you in your work. So, and I can understand the difficulty in, both those roles interconnecting, but I also can see the difficulty in parents kind of getting pushed around in the situation. Because there are situations where your teen, especially, no matter what you put in front of them, they're going to be like, no, I don't want to do it. And that's kind of your time to step up as the parent and educator and be like, this is what's expected of you. You need to do this. Not, oh, okay, you don't like it, let's switch curriculum, or let's completely drop it, or don't want to put the effort forth to learn how to teach it, so let's get rid of it. No, that's not modeling good behavior. And again, there are times in your homeschooling that you're going to have to be the one to step up and say, no, this is what you need to do. And again, I think if you've spent years establishing that mutual respect, that trust, and that open communication, that when your kids come to you and say, this isn't working, and they can really explain to you why something isn't working, and you can troubleshoot it together. That's so important in the relationship of homeschooling. I think so many people are like, well, your relationship is the most important thing. But yes, but that doesn't mean you just give up because something's hard. It also means you, as the parent and teacher, are going to have to push them into some uncomfortable areas of growing, because growing isn't always easy, but you were also the source of support and strength through that. So for example, my 11-year-old was doing her math review sheets lately, and she asked me, she's like, do I have to do bar graphs on the review sheets if I do really well with those in general? And I said, you're right, you do really understand bar graphs. I've never noticed an issue with you. Skip the bar graph problems until they reach a point where you don't understand them or you need my help. And again, that's that trust that she's communicating to me. I don't think I need this review, Mom. I understand it. And am I communicating to her, yes, your opinion is valid to me. I understand what you're saying, and I agree with you that this is not something you need to be reviewing. Again, this took years of scaffolding, parenting. It's not like it just comes out of nowhere. but I anticipate that her middle school and high school years will go a lot smoother. And I'm sure we'll have pushback just because of hormones and things like that. But I anticipate the years will go smoother just because I've laid that foundational and those steps to independence and that trust. So those are the 5 main guidelines I've had in my homeschooling and will continue to have in my homeschooling. And again, it's nothing that I sat down and wrote on a piece of paper and stuck to our wall. It's just foundational things that are part of our homeschooling, but they have really created benefits through all of my kids. And I've seen them really be able to grow in the environment that I've established for them, but also leave space for who they are as people, to really be mindful of the people. They're my kids, and I've known them since their entire life, but they're also their own people with their own opinions, ideas, and those opinions and ideas are valid to me, but it also has to be in a relationship of respect, that you're not throwing a tantrum because I'm asking you to do your math work, that you have expectations to do even as a child, that this is your school, this is your education. And my kids choose to continue homeschooling. They always have the option of going back to public school, and to be mindful that since this is their choice, to be respectful of themselves and their time with that choice, that if this is what they want to do, they're going to have to put the effort forth, just like I am as the educator and teacher in this scenario going to have to put the effort forth as well. So trusting each other that we're both taking these roles seriously. And it's not like, oh, it's so serious, you can't have fun. No, but you do have to have a level of respect and seriousness in this relationship, that yes, you're the parent, you love them, but you also have to put your foot down at certain times. And they need to understand that as well, that you're not being mean, you're not trying to make school hard or not fun. Heaven forbid it's not fun. But there are certain things your kids are going to have to learn, whether they want to or not. And you're the force sometimes that has to be that person. So, like I said, these are the guidelines. If you have any questions about anything I talked about in particular, if you'd like to share, a guideline or something that's important in your homeschool, I'd love to hear it as well. If not, thank you for watching.